Nina earns $38,000 a year. Grant earns $120,000. They have never met. They live in different cities, work in different fields, and will never know the other one exists. But last year, within a few months of each other, they both did the exact same responsible thing. They found the most famous budgeting rule on the internet, the 50-30-20 rule, and they decided to follow it faithfully, every month, no cheating, 50% on needs, 30% on wants, 20% on savings. And here's the strange part. That single identical decision is going to make Nina quietly poorer and let Grant quietly waste the best money-making years of his life. Same rule, two people, two completely opposite kinds of damage, and neither of them will feel a thing because from the inside, following the rule feels exactly like winning. Let me show you what this rule actually does to real people, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And by the end, you're going to know exactly which version is happening to you right now. First, let's be completely fair to the rule because it deserves that. The 50-30-20 rule isn't a scam. It didn't come from some influencer selling a course. It came from a 2005 book called All Your Worth, written by a bankruptcy expert who later became a U.S. senator and her daughter. It was a genuine attempt to take the terrifying, complicated world of personal budgeting and shrink it down to something a normal person could hold in their head. 50% of your take-home pay covers your needs: housing, food, utilities, transport, insurance, minimum debt payments. 30% covers your wants, the stuff that makes life worth living. 20% goes to savings and paying off debt faster. That's it. 3 buckets. Anyone can remember it. And for millions of people, it was the first budget they ever managed to stick to. So I'm not here to tell you the rule is stupid. I'm here to tell you something more uncomfortable. The rule is a speed limit, and they posted the exact same speed limit on 2 completely different roads. Let's start with Nina, because Nina is the person this rule is supposed to help the most, and she's the person it quietly hurts the worst. Nina takes home about $2,500 a month after taxes. She follows the rule to the letter. 50% for needs, that's $1,250. 30% for wants, that's $750. 20% for savings, that's $500 a month. On paper, beautiful. On paper, Nina is doing everything right, but now let's leave the paper and walk into Nina's actual life. Her rent, for a small 1-bedroom in a city where she can find work, is $1,300. That's already more than her entire needs bucket, and we haven't bought a single groceries yet. Add her phone, her utilities, her car insurance, her gas to get to work, the minimum payment on the debt she's already carrying, and the actual unavoidable cost of Nina's existence isn't 50% of her income. It's closer to 75%. Now watch what the rule does to her. Nina looks at her budget and sees that reality doesn't match the rule, and she has exactly 2 options, and both of them hurt her. Option 1, she's honest with herself, and she concludes she is failing. The rule says needs should be 50%. Hers are 75. The most famous budgeting rule in the world, the one everyone says is easy, is telling her she's doing it wrong. So she feels ashamed. She feels like she's bad with money, and a huge number of people in Nina's position do the thing that shame always makes people do. They give up. They stop budgeting entirely because a system that makes you feel like a failure every single month is a system you eventually walk away from. The rule that was supposed to start her journey is the exact thing that ends it. Or option 2, and this one's even more dangerous. Nina doesn't quit. Instead, she starts quietly reclassifying. To make the 50% needs number work, she starts calling things wants that are actually needs, or she starts telling herself the numbers are close enough. She convinces herself she's inside the rule when she isn't. And because the rule told her 20% savings is the target, and she feels like a failure hitting anything less, she does something tragic. She either fakes it on paper while her real savings is near 0, or she strains to force that $500 into savings. And then, 3 weeks later, an emergency hits and she has to pull it right back out, plus interest because there was never any room for it in the first place. The rule didn't build her a plan. It built her a trap with her own name on it. Here's what Nina can't see. The rule was never designed for her income. It was designed for a comfortable middle-class budget in 2005, in an economy where housing ate a much smaller slice of the average paycheck than it does today. Since then, in most of the country, the cost of a roof over your head has grown far faster than wages. The 50% needs bucket isn't a target Nina is failing to hit. It's a target from an economy that no longer exists. Telling Nina her needs should be 50% of her income is like handing her a map to a city that's been rezoned 3 times since it was printed. She's not lost because she's a bad navigator. She's lost because the map is wrong, and every month she blames herself for it. Now let's drive to the other road. Let's talk about Grant. Grant takes home about $7,300 a month. He also follows the rule to the letter, and he feels great about it, because Grant is the kind of person the rule makes look responsible. 50% needs, $36.50. 30% wants, $21.90. 20% savings, $14.60 a month. Grant automates it. $1,460 a month flows straight into his investments without him thinking about it, and every time he checks the box, he feels the warm glow of a man who has his life together. He's saving 20%. That's the rule. That's what you're supposed to do. Grant has arrived. Except Grant has walked into the opposite trap, and it's costing him more than Nina's is costing her. Because here's the thing about the 50-30-20 rule that nobody says out loud. It's built on percentages. And percentages are fair to Nina's problem, but brutal to Grant's opportunity. Grant's actual needs, his rent, his food, his real cost of living, aren't $36.50. They're closer to $3,000. His needs don't magically inflate just because his income did. The rule handed Grant a needs bucket that's $650 bigger than his life requires, and a wants bucket of nearly $2,200 a month that it labeled officially as fine, guilt-free, approved, and then it told him to stop saving at 20%. Do you see the leak? The rule capped Grant. The single most valuable thing Grant has is that his income grew, but his needs didn't have to. That gap, the space between what he earns and what he actually needs, is the most powerful wealth-building tool a human being ever gets. And the rule, the responsible, famous, trusted rule, told him to fill most of that gap with spending and call it a day at 20%. Grant could comfortably be saving 40% of his take-home. He'd barely feel it, but the rule gave him a permission slip to spend the difference, and Grant, being human, took it. Nicer apartment than he needs, newer car than he needs. The upgrades crept in, one reasonable decision at a time, each one blessed by a 30% wants bucket that told him he was still doing everything right. The mirage is fully formed now for both of them. Nina feels like a failure while following the rule perfectly. Grant feels like a success while leaving a fortune on the table, and both feelings are lies the rule told them. Now, if I stopped right here, I'd be doing the exact thing I can't stand, trashing something popular to make myself sound smart while telling you only half the story. So let me be honest about when this rule is genuinely, unquestionably good. Because it is. If you have never budgeted before in your life, if your money currently just disappears and you have no idea where it goes, the 50-30-20 rule is dramatically better than nothing. It gives you 3 buckets instead of chaos. It's simple enough that you'll actually use it, and a simple system you use beats a perfect system you abandon every single time. For a total beginner, this rule is a fantastic first step. It's also genuinely useful as a diagnostic, even for Nina. The moment her needs blow past 50%, the rule has told her something true and important, that her fixed costs are dangerously high relative to her income, which is exactly the problem she needs to solve. And for someone whose income and cost of living happen to land right in that comfortable middle zone the rule was designed for, it can work more or less as advertised. So the rule isn't the enemy. Let me be crystal clear about that. But notice the pattern in every single one of those wins. They're all about the starting line, a first step, a beginner's tool, a diagnostic, a rough guideline for one specific income band. Not one of those defenses says this rule is where you should end up. And that's the whole problem in one sentence. The rule is a perfectly good starting line that almost everyone treats as a finish line. Nina thinks she's failing to reach a finish line that was never built for her. Grant thinks he's crossed a finish line when he's barely left the blocks. Neither of them realizes the line was only ever meant to be the place you begin. Let me show you what that misunderstanding actually costs. Because in dollars, it's staggering. Let's just look at Grant, and let's be gentle. We'll assume he keeps earning the same and never gets another raise, which is unrealistic, but it keeps the math clean. Grant, following the rule, saves $14.60 a month. Over 30 years, at reasonable long-term market returns, that grows to roughly $2 million. That's a great outcome. That's the rule working exactly as designed. Now let's run the other Grant, the one who realized 20% was a floor and not a ceiling and pushed his savings to 40%, something his income easily allowed. That Grant saves about $2,900 a month. Same 30 years, same returns. He ends with roughly $4 million. Same salary, same discipline, same market, a $2 million difference. And the only thing that separated those two Grants was whether he believed 20% was the goal or the minimum. The rule didn't lie to Grant with a number that was wrong. It hurt him with a number that was too small, presented as if it were enough. And now here's the part I really need you to sit with, because it's the twist underneath the twist. We measured Grant's damage in dollars. But Nina's damage doesn't show up in a compound interest calculator, and it's arguably worse. Because when a system makes you feel like a failure, you don't lose 2% a year. You lose the whole game. You quit. And the cost of quitting isn't a smaller number at the end, it's a zero. Every year Nina spends not investing because the rule convinced her she was hopeless is a year that never compounds, and those early years are the ones that matter most. The rule didn't just give Nina a bad target. It risked taking her out of the arena entirely, right at the age when getting started matters more than it ever will again. Grant loses a fortune he never sees. Nina risks losing the future she was actually willing to fight for. And a rule did that. A rule everyone told them to trust. So if the rule is only a starting line, what does the finish line actually look like? What should Nina and Grant have done instead? Here's what actually works, and none of it is complicated. Step 1. Flip the order. The rule tells you to plan around percentages. Don't. Plan around a number. Decide what you're going to save first. An actual dollar amount, automated, gone before you can touch it. And then build the rest of your life around what's left. For Grant, that means setting his savings at a real target that reflects the gap between his income and his needs, not a lazy 20%. For Nina, it means starting with a savings number she can actually sustain, even if it's $25 a month, and protecting it fiercely instead of a $500 fantasy that collapses the first time her car breaks down. Pay the future first. Let the percentages be whatever they turn out to be. Step 2. Attack the biggest number, not the smallest one. The rule quietly gets people obsessing over the coffee in their 30% wants bucket while ignoring the thing that actually determines their financial life, the size of their needs bucket. For Nina, the real fix was never trimming a few wants. It was the brutal, unglamorous work of getting her fixed costs down. A cheaper housing situation, a roommate, a lower-cost city, dropping the car payment. And for both of them, the fastest lever of all sights outside the budget completely, growing the income. You cannot budget your way out of a needs bucket that's eating 75% of your pay. You have to shrink the big fixed costs or grow the top-line number. Everything else is rearranging deck chairs. Step 3. Treat every rule, including this one, including mine, as a starting point you're allowed to outgrow. The 50-30-20 rule is training wheels. Training wheels are wonderful. They're also the thing you're supposed to take off once you can ride. The people who build real wealth aren't the ones who found the perfect rule and obeyed it forever. They're the ones who used a simple rule to get moving and then paid enough attention to their own actual life to know when the rule stopped fitting and adjust it. Because that's the real trap, and it was never the numbers. It was never 50 or 30 or 20. The trap is what a rule does to your mind once you trust it completely. It stops you from looking at your own situation with clear eyes. Nina stopped trusting herself and started trusting a map that was wrong. Grant stopped pushing and started coasting the second a rule told him he'd done enough. A good rule is supposed to start the conversation between you and your money. This one, for millions of people, ends it. The rule isn't keeping you broke, outsourcing your judgment to it, and never asking whether it was built for someone like you. That's what's quietly keeping you broke. So look honestly at your own 3 buckets tonight. If your needs are crushing past 50%, you're not failing. Your fixed costs are screaming for a fix the rule can't give you. And if you're comfortably hitting 20% and feeling done, ask the harder question. How much could you actually be saving if you stopped treating the floor like the ceiling? One of those 2 people is you. And now you know which road you're driving on and exactly how fast you should really be going. Because there's a version of this same trap hiding inside almost every piece of money advice you've ever been handed. The retirement number everyone repeats, the emergency fund figure everyone quotes. And once you learn to spot it, you start seeing it everywhere.